This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you become a great personal trainer and grow your high-intensity training business.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. My guests today are Smarter Exercise owner Thom and Gethit owner Craig Hubert. All three of us recently attended the Resistance Exercise Conference 2019, and we thought it would be a good idea to have a roundtable-like discussion to review the conference and give you a taste of what it's all about and help you decide if you want to come in 2020. This was a really, really fun conversation. We talk about Fred Hahn's amazing body transformation and how Thom is now trying to look like Fred Hahn. We talk about both Craig and Thom's feedback on the ARX machines and the gluteator. We discussed the brutality of the early morning workouts, and there's some pretty funny stories around that. We talk about everyone's key takeaways in terms of both strength training business and personal training, what we are taking from the conference and implementing in our own exercise and dietary regimens, and also what we are implementing in business as well. And then we summarize most of the keynote presentations from people like Luke Carlson, James Fisher, PhD, and also Dr. Doug McGuff. And we discuss much, much more than that. So please relax and enjoy this REC 2019 review with Thom, Craig Hubert, and yours truly. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. I've got a real treat for you guys today. I'm joined by Craig Hubert from Gethit, who you'll recognize from previous episodes, and also Thom from Smarter Exercise. We were all at the Resistance Exercise Conference earlier this year in 2019, and we all had a great time. And we thought we would do a podcast to talk about our learnings and what we enjoyed most about the event. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hey, thanks, Lawrence, for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence.
You're most welcome. So I had to start off with this one because it just made me laugh. Thom, you wrote a great blog post following the conference, and I think the title or the first line basically said that you wanted to look like Fred Hahn. Do you want to talk about that realization and that discovery?
Well, so Fred has been on, the morning shows over the past few years, like, the Today Show and whatnot. And so I've seen him, and he, at the time, he looked fit, and, but he didn't look, he did not look the same as he looked at the conference, right? He looked like he was in shape, but not super in shape. Anyway, so I saw him. He was actually the first person I saw when I was checking into the hotel, and went over just to introduce myself. And just a super nice guy, but the dude looks ripped. And so yeah, I want to look like Fred Hahn. So I started. The next morning he actually came over. I was having breakfast. He was having coffee, and I was just asking him. So Fred, obviously you've made a dramatic transformation here. What are you doing? And I know that Fred's always been, or not always, for a while he's been doing the low carb, but he told me that he would combine that with intermittent fasting. Well, so that's great. So talk to me a little bit about his program, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to start intermittent fasting, and since the conference, I'm actually down 11 pounds.
Wow! And you look like you're in good shape anyway, Thom. So that seems quite significant. So, I mean, what do you think? Because I know Fred Hahn attributes a lot of that to growth hormone elevation, and by having a smaller eating window, which is like, whatever it is, 4 hours or so. I know it's a bit larger than that, 6 hours. Okay. Yeah. Now,
he said sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah.
He said he got so lean at sticking to a 4-hour window that it was too much. He was down to like 3.5% body fat. And that was just, he said he looks in the mirror, it's like gross. So he opened that window up to about 6 hours. A 6-hour window is what I'm using right now. And seems to be working.
Have you measured lean mass growth at all as well?
I have, he has fancier toys than I have. I just have a little handheld Omron body fat tester, $35 off Amazon.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's
so yeah, I've been watching that, but I don't know. I don't know what's what. I don't know what's water, what's what.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Because I did the same. I saw Fred. I think it was the first morning sitting down near the foyer, and I just sort of, as kind of listeners would know, and I sort of sat down in front of him and just said, okay, Fred, tell me your entire protocol in detail, and did exactly the same thing. But you look insane. He looks shredded. And yeah, it was, in a nutshell, it was what you said there in terms of low carb, intermittent fasting, 6-hour eating window, and consuming essentially enormous amounts of food in that time that, he said to me he'd eat like an entire chicken. And then 2 high intensity strength training sessions a week is my understanding. And he looks incredible. Now, the thing I'm skeptical about is, whether or not the mechanism that's really helped him get these results is the fact that growth hormone is elevated, more so, but due to the longer fasting period. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's what's going on? Like, what's your thoughts about, what's causing it?
Lawrence, I'm just now starting to read up on the benefits of fasting, and I don't know what's going on, but something's happening.
What about you, Craig? What did you think?
Well, first of all, yeah, when I met Fred for the first time, the first thing you notice is how lean he is. And again, like Thom, you see him on the cover of his book, you see him on the different interviews and whatnot, and he always looked fit. But I was looking at him thinking, wow, I think he's got about 10 years on me. And I kind of looked at myself after. I'm like, well, what's my excuse? Because this guy looks fantastic. In terms of what I got from speaking with him and how he made those changes, one of the things he did mention was that he had cut out alcohol. And if you go back to the podcast that you had done with him, one of the things he mentions in terms of his training and his eating, which I think was near the end of that podcast, but he mentions, having, I think it was 3 glasses of wine or something like that. He'd cut out the beer. But so I think as much as, the growth hormone, maybe that is part of it. I think just cutting out the alcohol in terms of the leanness would have made a huge difference. Now, I think he had said, what did we say, 5 or 6 pounds of muscle added? I think was
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that did make a difference for him. I honestly, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for the mechanism in terms of, the difference in that, the 2 hours in the eating window, if that would make that big a difference or not. But either or, it's worked for him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's a good point. I remember having a conversation with Dr. Ted Naiman, and I know that Paulo Gentil, who's a PhD in Brazil, has done some research, or at least talked about research, which showed that alcohol consumption definitely did not help with hypertrophy. And, I remember Ted Naiman saying that you see a lot of alcoholics have incredible amounts of sarcopenia and muscle wasting, which is what sarcopenia is, for those that don't know. And so there could be something to that. The alcohol might have been a real limiter, perhaps. But who knows?
Yeah.
Who cares, right?
Well, that's it. Well, at the end of the day,
just follow the protocol.
Follow the protocol, and look, he, speaking to him, he feels better from doing it. He certainly looks fantastic. So, whether it's increasing growth hormone or whatever the case may be, it works. So, rather than worrying about the why, it's certainly not detrimental to your health. So.
Absolutely. So I wanted to move on to talking about ARX quickly. Did you both get a shot at trying the ARX? What were your thoughts? I'll start with you, Thom.
I did try the ARX, the Alpha, and that's a pretty impressive. It's a pretty impressive machine, I have to tell you. It was unforgiving, and I was talking to clients earlier this week. It's like, God, that was terrible. I loved it. Or, God, that was terrible. I hated it. There's two different kinds of responses, So it was terrible and I loved it.
What about you, Craig? Did you get a go?
Yeah, I actually did. On the Friday nights before we went across the street, I took a shot on the leg press. And one of the things, and we can maybe tie this into Dr. Fisher's talk after, but sure. In terms of the negatives and sort of set extenders to try to hit failure, one of the things I know about myself is I tend to wuss out on the legs. So I will, say I push hard, but deep down I know I could have squeezed out an extra rep. I could have added something to really go a little deeper. So I did the leg press, and that beat the crap out of me. It's nothing like I've ever felt before, and I really, to be honest, I'd spoken to Jim over the last year with the idea of maybe purchasing either the Alpha or the Omni. So I was almost wanting to hate it so that I could just kind of leave it aside and move on to the next thing and not worry about the cash outlay that goes with that machine. But I loved it. I know on the membership site you have Dr. Fisher's review of what
sure.
he found on it. There was a couple of comments he had made in terms of needing a little bit better coaching. It's very easy to brace against the machine, to sort of move around, wiggle, stress, strain, squeeze, do everything that maybe you're not supposed to do outside of the hip movement and knee movement, ankle movement. But I think that's just something that you with practice you'll get better at relaxing the rest of the body and just doing what needs to be done. But the turnarounds on it were incredibly smooth, in my opinion, versus what I was expecting, because I was really expecting it to feel a lot choppier. The hyper negatives were just ridiculous. Just the fact that you can't hide from the machine in terms of the data. There's nowhere to go. You can't half-ass it without it showing it to you in your face. And then you're like, yeah, I'm not pushing, So if, I would definitely recommend it. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was terrible and it was great. Just like Thom said.
Yeah. I love, the turnarounds were, I mean, you can't teach that. They were beautiful.
So what was
a tear to your eye. Literally.
Yeah. So Thom, what was your thoughts? Do you think you're going to end up acquiring one at some point, or maybe you don't have to reveal that yet, but just curious.
No, I would love to acquire one. So for me, these machines are beautiful, and here's the struggle that I have with ARX. So first off, my gym name is Smarter Exercise. It really makes sense to have ARX equipment in a gym called Smarter Exercise because it's obvious. They're smart machines. The execution is brilliant. So I can't say enough positive things about it. Having said that, I'm concerned about my clients, my existing clients. Right. First off, could I, if I were to get an ARX machine, could I get enough new clients to support that? Probably the answer is yes, but you have to have a bankroll of somewhat in order to go down that path. The other thing is they're really excellent, and I'm almost afraid that some of my clients, it's going to be they're too good. The machine, the machines are so good that they take away the ability to sandbag some days. You know what I mean? Or at least that's my experience. I don't know if that's actually the case.
Craig, did you want to say something? Go on. Yeah, I've got a question too. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I don't know if people will see that now. So I just raised my hand to jump in there. So to the sandbag, it's an interesting point. Because when I got off the leg press, I kind of turned to Jim Keen and I said, I can't do this to my clients like this. They're never going to come back. And then he went into sort of the pitch in terms of just getting over the line, and you don't have to sit there and crush them the way that he did it to me. But we're also at a conference with trainers and gym owners where, the egos are plenty and we want to show off in front of our peers, So there's a little bit of an extra push with that. But I think to Tom's point about the sandbagging, maybe that's also an indicator that, in terms of frequency, that the client maybe is actually at a point where maybe it's not every 5 days, or maybe it's not twice a week, or, maybe there's something in there that, okay, you're not actually recovered to be here doing this exercise today. And perhaps with the way the data is set up on the ARX, you're going to end up long-term with a better idea of what the client needs in terms of volume, frequency, and intensity. Just a thought.
Thom, so okay, that's interesting. So is it? Have I got the understanding right that you think you might be shooting yourself in the foot in that it's so effective that you would have clients would work out less, and that could be a problem for your business model in terms of revenue, or have I misunderstood that?
Well, I think so from one perspective, it removes the human element from the equation, where it is you're going to push as hard as you can push, right, that day. I'm not willing to work as hard every day in a workout as I am. There are some days that are just off days, and those off days don't necessarily need to be accentuated by a machine telling you that your performance is poor today. So for some people, they are looking for different things that maybe you or I or Craig are looking at. When we go in, we want to work hard every day and get the most out of our workout. Most people say they want to do that, and that's true for the most part, but there are some days where you just don't got it. And I don't know how that is addressed on the ARX equipment, that human element.
So yeah, you would be concerned about them feeling like failures if their performance is nowhere near their previous on some days.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting criticism.
If I could just jump in, so maybe to your point, Thom, but maybe that's where that human element actually comes back. In that, as a coach, we're with the ARX, we're not necessarily needed to coach the turnarounds anymore because it's there. And as I think Jim said on the roundtable, we don't have to coach the speed of movement because it's already there. And there's all these things that we do as coaches that's been eliminated by the machine in a lot of ways. But the coaching end of it, outside of the technical, is where, we come in to motivate and actually maybe look, okay, so your numbers are down, your performance isn't as good as it was last time, but maybe you realize, communicating with the client that they had a really crappy week, maybe personal relationships are having problems, or maybe there's something at work, or their nutrition sucks, or they're not sleeping. And then that becomes more of the emphasis of what we do as coaches. I don't know.
Well,
just a thought.
Yeah, I'm sure that, I'm sure that they've already addressed, the folks at ARX have already addressed some of these concerns. I'm just not aware of them. And as a new person looking at an ARX, those are my concerns.
Yeah.
So they may be addressed. It may just be a lack of experience with the equipment on my side. So who knows?
No, great questions. And, I'll certainly be talking to Mike and Jim and probably Mark and Jason and the rest of the team over the in the future, and we'll be doing more content together. So it gives me great questions to ask them. Now, guys, I really want to talk to you about the early morning workout, because it's always the highlight. One of my favorite parts of the entire conference was watching Craig suffer during his negative chin-ups, because I was dying from basically quitting my workout halfway through because I felt too nauseous. And I was sitting there with my head in my hands, and I just glanced left to see Craig practically crying. He was on the edge doing negative chins at the end of his workout, and it was just beautiful. So Craig, tell us about your workout.
So, because Lawrence, you had set this up previously. We had the email exchange where you asked me if I was ready for my 70 negative chin-ups, and I just sort of looked at it. I'm like, what? Why are they going to do that? What's the point of 70 negative chin-ups? That's ridiculous. I was terrified. So we started the morning workout. I have a long-term kind of back issue, more sacroiliac. So I think my saving grace was I started on the legs using the pendulum squat. And I had to skip out on a couple of things because it was just aggravating my back, thankfully. Because by the time I got through the workout, which was brilliant, because I just assumed that we would end up with a trainer that kind of took us through each station or whatever. But obviously, logistically, that wouldn't work with the amount of people that were doing it. So what they did was they had an individual trainer from Discover Strength stationed at each workout station. So first of all, you had no sympathy or empathy from the instructors going from one to the other, because they're not following you around, so they don't really care what you did before. So by the time I got through to the negative chin-ups, I wish I could remember his name because I could curse him, but he's like, okay, we're going to do, I think it was 3 negative chins. And at that point, I couldn't raise my arms. Like, they were done. Like, I really was just looking at him like, are you strapping me to this thing and lifting me up? Because I couldn't get up. I couldn't do it. So I loved the workout. I was racked. I felt beat up, all in a good way. I was very, very impressed with the instruction, from station to station with each instructor, in terms of the way they were able to cue it, in the terms of the way they were motivating, because there were points where I felt like I was just giving nothing. And this goes into actually Luke's talk a little bit, but they were very good at specifically telling you what you were doing well. So, on the dumbbell chest press at one point, it was, Craig, you're doing great pause, great turnaround on the bottom. So something where I was like, okay, this sucks. I can barely push. And then, that little bit of encouragement to keep going. And it was across the board. Like they've done an amazing job with their staff in terms of selecting them, but also just in teaching them and the way they in turn work with the clients. I thought it was brilliant.
Do you want to just quickly run through the full routine? Can you remember?
Okay, so in my case, and I think Thom, I don't remember if you were on the same run as me, because they had 2 different streams going, right?
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I did not work as hard as you did.
Oh, yes, you did. I just exaggerated it for effect for Lawrence because I didn't want him to feel bad. So I started, if I recall, it was the duo or the pro squat. Is that what they called it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pendulum. So and most of the machines, I think all the machines were pendulum. At least on the stream, on what I did. I don't know if Dynavex Gluteator was on the other side, if they used it for the workout or not. But I started with the pro squat. It went to I think it was lateral band walks, then to the pendulum leg curl. I think it was those three. If memory serves, I hit the pendulum chest press. From there, I think it was the row, from the seated row to, I believe it was a dumbbell press with a couple of negatives thrown in at the end. Then it was the manual resistance, which sucked, by the way, because air was enough resistance. I didn't need anybody pushing down on me. But there was the side raise, shoulder side raise, and I believe rear delts as well, manually resisted, and then the negative chins, and then it was manual resistance tricep extensions. I think that was all of it. Oh yeah, actually before the seated row, right after the seated row, was also the pendulum, the 5-way neck with the shrugs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Extensive. Yeah, and just add a bit more color. So just those listening, most of it was probably single set to failure, but they threw in advanced techniques, negative, some were negative only, some assisted repetitions as well. Thom, was yours the same, or did you do the other set?
I totally skipped stations. I was very selective. I was very selective in my workouts. I want to agree with Craig on the quality of instruction. The guys there were just guys and ladies that were fantastic. Everyone, I was super impressed. As far as the workout itself, it was hard work, and I think I blacked it out. So I can't give you the details that you're looking for. It's all just a bad dream to me.
It's all a blur. Well, let me tell you about mine, because I thought this was quite hilarious, and I think this might be quite entertaining to listeners. So I think being due to having the podcast and being a little bit cocky sometimes, I definitely set myself up to fail. So let's just start from the night before. So I'm out having drinks and food at the place across the road from the hotel with, I can't remember, I don't think you guys were there actually. I don't remember seeing you there.
We were there.
Oh, sorry. Well, there was a lot of people there, wasn't there? So, and I turned up late anyway. And I just remember Blair and his team. So Blair's from MedX Precision Fitness. I remember their team leaving relatively early, and I'm like, "Oh, where you going? Like, stay for another one." And he's looking at me going, "Early morning workout, mate. No chance, you know." And then I start teasing him, saying, "What are you pathetic, or can't you handle like one more drink?" And Blair's like really competitive. So he looks at me like I hate you. But he was a lot smarter than me. So I only stayed for one more, but definitely wasn't a good idea. So fast forward to the next day, I walk into that room, see all the machines, see all the trainers, and I just feel an immense amount of fear. I feel like, oh my God, I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have drank last night. I'm jet lagged. This is a really bad idea. I suddenly just want to like go back to bed. Like, I'm just not in the mood now. And obviously I'd been a bit of an idiot by being all overconfident the night before, which is exactly what happened in 2018. So you think I'd learn. But anyway, so I went through the workout, started off okay. I was doing so I did the other line, Craig. So I did the leg press, and then followed by band walks. Yeah. And then some what do you call it? Split squats between the tables. Jesus, it was so much. I felt just destroyed on my legs after all that. And then I can't remember the exact order, but I think it was chest press, pull down, but it was negative only. And that was horrible. Shrugs with a trap bar, which I don't know what it is. Maybe you guys would know this because you were far more experienced than me. But when I do shrugs with a trap bar, I just feel so nauseous. Like, really? Something about that exercise, it just makes me feel sick. I don't know whether it's because it's so, I don't know. Before I go on, do you have any thoughts on that? Thom, do you have any views on why that is? You ever heard that?
I don't. I don't do shrugs very often enough to help you with that.
I mean, yeah, go on. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest. I think it's probably no. Maybe I mean, unless it's where you're putting it in terms of the sequencing, like maybe you're already pretty gassed, and throwing that in where it goes is sort of that your tipping point.
Yeah, it could have been a volume issue. I really don't know because I've got it in one of my routines at the moment. I'm trying to just maybe it's a skill thing. It's new. Perhaps it's one of the reasons.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of really is it was pretty warm in there, and there was no moving air. And whenever I get overheated, I feel a little bit nauseous. So it could be some of that.
Okay. So anyway, I'll continue on, and I'll let you guys talk very soon. But it was quite funny because I finished up with the shrugs, and I think Rick was the trainer. He's one of the longest standing experienced Discover Strength trainers. And he just said to me, because I felt like a failure. And he just said, failure is all that matters. And I looked at him, I said, I didn't get anywhere near failure. I'm just too nauseous. I just feel sick. And then I stopped, right? And I looked at the chap who was on the dumbbell shoulder press station. I was like, I'm sorry, I've just got to quit there. And then I went and basically was almost sick and just sat over by the tables feeling sorry for myself. And then Blair was gloating, and him and his team were saying, "I told you so," and all that. They weren't that bad, to be honest. They were quite sympathetic. I remember Tasso came up behind me and put an enormous amount of ice in a tea towel on my back, like near my neck. Yeah, which I appreciate, Tasso, if you're listening to this. It did actually help a lot. Now, here's the best part. So then after a while, obviously the nausea faded, and I walked up to David Geschneider, right, who's the head of operations for DS. I went up to him and I said, look, I feel like I feel a bit nauseous, but I'm feeling a bit better. Should I just, shoot off and call it a day with the workout? And he said, and I love how this started. He said to me, and I'm really glad he said this. He said, I don't think it's a good idea for you to leave without training all of your muscles. so he was like, I would always, obviously he's just perhaps encouraging me to finish the workout. I mean, what does he care? And so I finished the workout and I went back in, and obviously the trainers were like, yeah, come on, Lawrence, like that. And it was awesome. I mean, the manual resistance was amazing. It was my favorite bit. And for those that don't know what that is, that's just where there's no weights involved. And basically you're pushing muscles against the trainer's hands, basically. So if you're doing for instance, a lateral raise, you're moving both of your arms out to your sides, and they're kind of pushing down as resistance as you go. And it's an excellent way to provide a really effective workout with minimal equipment, for sure. So that was powerful. And then at the end, I just went to the chin-up station, and I said, and it wasn't even part of the routine. I just had to do it. I'm going to do this just for the hell of it. And I managed one chin-up, and then I was toast, and that was it. But I was pleased that I finished, because last year I didn't get anywhere near finishing the workout because the same thing happened to me. And so there you go. That's the story.
Well, you have jet lag to deal with too. It's not like you're flying like an hour away, or you know what I mean. It's
yeah, that's it, Lawrence. Jet lag.
and
yes, jet lag and alcohol and all of those things. but yeah, it's funny because it's just a reminder that it's really a bad idea to obviously gloat about or be cocky prior to a workout, because there's nothing that makes you more humble than a high intensity training workout of that caliber, is there? It really does bring you down to earth and ground you.
Well, and I think too, one of the, because I train myself, right? So I don't have anybody when I go through my workouts pushing me to that limit. And it's, for anybody that says, oh, I could do this on my own. Yeah, you can, but I don't think you're going to hit those levels of intensity. Because I felt like I was busting out of my shirt, like just with the pump that came with it after was pretty impressive. Oh, yeah. I think I gained like 30 pounds of muscle. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, Tom, right. I walked out. Tom didn't even recognize me. Who's that big guy?
It was huge. Is that the Hulk?
So I want to talk about the gluteator for a moment. Thom, I know you're a big fan. And I gave it a good kind of experiment, and I didn't use it during the workout, but I tried it between keynotes, and Jeff was there with me, and he kind of helped introduce me to it. Jeff Casebolt's the co-founder of Dynavet, who produced the machines, and I really liked it. I really liked the strength curve, the low friction. It's just a really nice machine. What did you? So, Thom, I believe you purchased one, didn't you? So you're clearly a fan.
Well, I'm trying to. It's on back order, so maybe they're having some great success as a result of the conference. So it's going to take me a little bit longer to get one than I was hoping, but I went ahead and ordered one. What I really like about the Gluteator is, so I have the super slow leg press, and obviously, in order to really get some work on the buttocks, you have to involve the knees and you have to involve the lower back. And so for clients who have, problems with knees or low back, the leg press is troublesome. Mm-hmm. So what I really love about the Gluteator is that we can really target the buttocks without involving the lower back and without involving the knees, which will be fantastic.
Craig, did you get a go at it?
Yeah, well, so without getting into the
do you know about a Gluteator?
The Gluteator?
Yeah, do you know anything about a Gluteator?
Oh, you're taunting me, eh? I had a Gluteator, which is now in the possession of a very nice man by the name of Michael Petrella. Without getting into the details of the backstory, I begrudgingly sold it on behalf of my former employer. It was an olive branch sale, if you will. So to this day, I very much regret that move. Though I think, in terms of, I think Michael buying it, I think has been great for Dynavet as a company because of Michael's exposure in the way he's presented that machine. So in that regard, I think it went to the right guy. I am working on purchasing another one. I've got a couple of other things, unfortunately, that I have to spend my money on. But I think it's a brilliant piece of equipment. And even because I'll be upfront, I am definitely looking at purchasing the ARX. But the Gluteator would be a piece that I would purchase in accompanying an ARX, regardless. But anyways, that's definitely something I'll be purchasing again, and I'll pick one up. It's as I mentioned, I have SI problems, and when I was using the Gluteator regularly, I had zero problems with my sacroiliac joint or my lumbar spine. So it is a really, I think, important piece, and I think if you have a studio, I think it should just be a staple. I think it should be part of every facility, to be honest with you.
I'm just curious, talking about ARX again, and I guess thinking about what one might need or what you guys would think would look like for a suitable studio setup. So ARX obviously hits a number of the key bases in terms of providing a suitable number of exercise and big five and some. And we can talk about the big five later because I know you want to talk about that, Craig. Now, Thom made a really good point about the potential downside with the leg press for certain clients and where the Gluteator fits into that. Do you also think that if you've got, let's say, an Omni and an Alpha, and then you've got a Gluteator, do you then think it's good to have a four-way neck machine and maybe some of these other machines that kind of work the smaller muscles, like Discover Strength is it a tibia flexion machine or something? Hammer strength, I believe. So what else would you, with the knowledge you guys have around in terms of equipment, what else would you supplement that with, do you think, or not? And that was to Thom, I suppose. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I love equipment. So the more equipment I have, the more options I have to train clients. So if I had more room and more money and more room, I'd probably build a bigger studio so I can fit more equipment in there. I don't think I answered your question, but I think equipment good.
Craig, any thoughts?
So I love, kind of like Thom, I love gear and I love the equipment, but I'm also I like the whole minimalist, less is more kind of approach in terms of space. And so, as much as like, if I was going to do, when I do the outlay for ARX, I'm spending that money, not just for the data, but the idea that, and for the, for the way the machine works, but also just for the idea that I can downsize all the other pieces I need. That said, I think if I was going to, when the time comes, I would ideally do the Alpha and the Omni, the Gluteator, definitely a 4-way neck, which I purchased at 3 a.m. at Denny's. Used, but I did buy one while we were sitting around the table.
How do you mean you bought one? What you had a chat with? Go on.
Well, we were also just the quick backstory. We all ended up out and then ended up at Denny's at 2:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the morning.
That's right,
on the Saturday evening, and sitting across from. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I feel terrible. Yeah,
the chap who's the representative for Pendulum, right?
Yeah, I've been going back and forth with. Oh God! Anyways, I apologize. I'll look for it in a second. But I mentioned how I needed a 4-way neck machine, and he mentioned that he had 2 of them used, and if I was interested, so I said yes. We shook on it, and I should have that. I think the weekend of May 4th. So I would add the 4-way neck, the Gluteator, probably a leg extension and a leg curl. Again, so sort of the areas that neither piece of ARX are able to target directly. But I think outside of that, and maybe a lumbar, the MedX lumbar, I'd keep that. But outside of that, I don't know that there's anything else specifically that I would feel is necessary. There is maybe something to the idea of gravity-based equipment that maybe the ARX doesn't have, and maybe that has to do with something to do with hormonal signaling. I don't know. Also, the idea of just lifting something heavy over your head. So I would probably go with just a dumbbell set and a bench to kind of complement that. But outside of that, I think that would pretty much cover my needs.
Yeah, I have vague memories of Denny's. I believe that was my idea, actually. It might have been.
It was Thom. Unfortunately, I think on the Saturday night, Thom had flown back already.
That's right.
I had started my fast.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I was really not very happy with the food at Denny's, but I think it's quite well known that it's not 5-star. And but that being said, I was very grateful when, again, a chap's name, I can't remember his name, the guy's the rep from Pendulum, he actually paid for the entire.
It's Brian.
Brian, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Brian, if you're listening to this. I appreciate you doing that. And I don't remember you basically buying that machine at the table because I was so tired. If you can remember, I was practically asleep with my head. I think at one point I did actually fall asleep, like at the table.
Yeah, you dozed off.
Yeah.
That was a very good night. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting that machine in, and I reached out to Brian actually, I think later in the week when we got home, and just to make sure that I had those details correct, and he's like, no, yeah, that's it, So we've gone back and forth, and I will probably go down. I am going down to STG, Michael Petrella's facility, and I'll actually pick up the piece there. So he'll drop it off there, and I'll go get it. So I'll have the machine and get a tour of Michael's facility, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
Be sure to.
Oh, sorry, Thom.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, be sure to wave to that Gluteator.
Oh, I might jump on it. I'll take a photo and send it out. We'll go do. I'll jump back on social media just for that.
And I should also mention, so people will know, members will know, and regular listeners will probably know that Mike has a very, very impressive new gym where it's a much bigger space, and he's got probably one of the largest, if not the largest, collection of kind of MedX, Nautilus, Pendulum, hammer strength machines in probably, would you say, in the US and North America or globally in one facility?
I think probably North America. I guess the only comparison would be, and I've never seen it, but everybody talks about it, is Jim Flanagan's quote unquote home gym.
Yeah. And I know he's just published, I think I saw it on Facebook or something, a video tour, I believe. Or it might have been on email to me. I can't remember, but I'll see what I can do and dig up some links and put them in the show notes of this so people can get a good look at his new facility, because it's very cool, very inspiring. Thom, what did you enjoy most about the conference, do you think? What was your biggest takeaway or most enjoyable moment?
Quite honestly, the most enjoyable thing to me was the attendees. Being able to walk up to Fred, being able to walk up to, or sit next to Adam Zickerman during the conference. All these guys, meeting you guys. It's and everybody. Anne-Marie Anderson. I've heard on the podcast, and just meeting all these guys. Bill Crawford, Richard Wolff. It was fantastic being in a room. Which, by the way. Just as a little side note, I don't know if anybody noticed that nobody was sick in that room. But as soon as I went to the airport, every other person is coughing and sneezing. And I think it says something to being around healthy people. But no, I think just being able to be around everybody was fantastic. And just, it made me realize how academically lazy I've become. Talking with Fred, I need to step up my game, both in my diet, which I'm doing, and just I started writing blogs again, and just started. It kind of re-energized me, so I'm really happy about that.
Awesome. I just wanted to comment on that. I noticed as well, traveling to and from the conference, just how sick people are, not only in ailments, but also just in terms of obesity, and especially when you're going through the airports. And it occurred to me when we were at REC, or REC as some people call it, that we were like this bubble. We were like this group of outliers, of people that are relatively lean, strong, healthy people. And when you could tell immediately if someone wasn't part of our group, right? Because you just look at their health status, and I mean, you probably have a good probability of guessing whether they weren't part of it. Craig, what about you? What was your highlight, do you think?
I don't know if I can really pick one per se, but I would definitely echo Tom's sentiments. Finally meeting you face to face.
You were the first face I saw when I walked through the door.
That's right, when you walked through the door. Yeah, with beer in my hand, I believe. But I had the beer before I spoke to Fred. I just want to stress that. So no more beer after that weekend. So meeting you, and then I was it was actually early in the night on the Thursday talking with Russ Wakefield, and Thom was actually sitting quietly having a drink, and he came over and got to meet Thom, and we got along very well, I think. And it was great to meet him, and the same thing, like he said, to be able to speak with Fred, who's I've got 2 books sitting in my facility written by him. Adam Zickerman, same thing, getting to speak with him, and same thing. I've got a book of his, Body by Science, and there's I had a couple of quick words with Dr. McGuff. So you get to meet these people that that have really influenced you. Or at least influenced me in the way I think and in the way that I run my business. It's humbling. It's fun. And, they're all great people. That was one of the things I noticed, was everybody I spoke to, everybody I met there were just legitimately nice individuals. Great to share information. If you had questions about their business, there was nobody that was standoffish about it. Very open. And it was just a great community. And I years back, I think, on my quick plug previous podcast that I was on with you, I had mentioned how my influences were Charles Poliquin and Paul Chek and all these guys, and those were the kind of conferences I was going to, and I'll caveat the following by saying I'm 20 years older than I was when I was for the most part, or 15 years older than those ones that I went to, but the difference in the attendees in terms of, and the presenters, I might add too, in terms of how open the presenters were to be able to speak with them and kind of ask questions after they presented, because a lot of the conferences I've gone to in the past, they do their presentations and that's it. They're off the clock and they don't really want to deal with you. And a lot of the other attendees, it's more ego driven, and that's partially maybe because it's more of a sporting world, and a sporting the topics are a little different and the people that attend are a little different. But so there's definitely that. The whole community was great. The organization of the event, I was really amazed with. It ran so smoothly. The bus tour on the Friday, which all three of us did, seeing, I think it was 3 of Luke's facilities of Discover Strength. That blew my mind. Going back to your question about who had the most successful HIIT gym, high intensity studio, on your Facebook post a while back, which, there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of, as to who it was and what that actually means and everything. I came out of it after seeing, I think it was the Plymouth location, which I believe is the smallest one for Discover Strength, and getting an opportunity to speak with Luke quickly in terms of what their revenues were. And I was I was blown away. I was just frankly blown away and massively inspired. Just like Thom said, I came out of it refreshed, energized. It was, I wasn't going to go. And I'm glad I did, because I'm going to make this an annual event, to the point where I will also do the Real HIIT experience. There's one coming up in May. I won't make that one, but So I won't make that one, but I will definitely get out to the one that follows. So yeah, just all around, I think anybody who hasn't gone that listens to this, I think you're really missing out, and you owe it to yourself to get down and do one of these conferences.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, ARX. Are you looking to create a cutting-edge, high-intensity training facility? Are you confused on what equipment to use or how to separate yourself from the masses? Well, then ARX Fit might be the answer you're looking for. I asked Mike Polano from ARX a few questions about how ARX machines are challenging the status quo of the exercise industry around the globe. Mike, if you could, give the listeners a quick summary of why ARX is so different from the traditional machines or tools they're used to seeing in most exercise facilities.
ARX is totally different than anything you've seen before. This isn't just another weight stack machine. We've looked at the last 40 years of exercise technology and used that knowledge to create something entirely new. ARX uses a new form of resistance, a motor, and we pair that motor with computer software so that we can maximize the safety, effectiveness, and efficiency of your workouts. So you may be asking, okay, but how does ARX compare to weights? Traditional machines you see in gyms today are based on lifting metal weights and battling gravity. What people don't realize is that when you're forced to lift a static weight like this, one that doesn't adapt or change while you use it, you're underloading yourself rep after rep. And this unnecessarily limits your ability to make improvements. With ARX, we've taken a totally different approach. We removed weights and gravity from the equation altogether. Instead, ARX combines our patented motorized resistance with our custom computer software to provide you with the world's safest, most effective, and most quantified form of resistance training ever. When you train with ARX, you are training to your perfect level of resistance, both positively and negatively 100% of the time. No more guessing what weight to use. ARX does all of that for you, instantly and automatically. We'll also track and measure every second of every rep, so you can quantify all of your workouts to find out if you're improving and by exactly how much. Whether your goals are bigger muscles, increased strength, stronger bones, or just to look good in a bathing suit, ARX can help you achieve all of these and more, but do so in a fraction of the time it would take compared to traditional equipment. If you're looking for the most efficient, most effective, and most quantified piece of exercise equipment on the market today, then look no further than ARX.
Thanks, Mike. That all sounds really impressive. If you'd like to learn more about ARX, visit arxfit.com and mention that you heard about ARX on the Corporate Warrior podcast to receive an exclusive deal of $500 off shipping and installation off your ARX machines. Now, Luke's been public about the revenue at that location. And last time, off the top of my head, isn't it 1.6 million at the smallest location, or is it more than that? It might have been more than that.
He had told me 1.6, and Thom, I don't know if you felt the same way like when we went into that place, but if you look at and every gym is clean, like every studio I've been to is fairly clean. But what amazed me was when I was looking at the equipment, there's not a speck of dust. And maybe that was also, okay, we've got a tour coming through. We got to make sure this place is top shape. But I have a sneaking suspicion that's just the way it looks anytime you walk in. Because, I mean, even the shields on the equipment were like a glossy, shiny black. It looked like it just came off, it had just been manufactured. Like just every aspect of the way that setup was run was, I was just blown away.
Yeah. Sorry, Thom, go on. Yep.
Oh no, I was just going to agree. Just high quality instruction, high quality environment. They run like clockwork, and it's a brilliant operation.
Thom, what do you think? What are is there a key takeaway that you're implementing in your business following the conference that comes to mind?
Well, Discover Strength has a very different model than mine. So I'm a single operator, and it's a different ball game. And I'm not looking to produce $1.6 million in my facility. I'm just not looking to do that, because I run a business. This is my livelihood, and I'm not trying to kill it. I'm not trying to knock it out of the park.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I respect that. You've built, from what I understand, quite a nice lifestyle business for you. So I understand why perhaps you wouldn't want to take on all that extra stress.
Well, it's. I'm gonna service the people who want to improve their lives through strength training. And if you don't want to improve your life through strength training, that's fine. That's totally fine. I don't need to go and hunt you down. You know where I am. I'm easy to find. If you'd like to find me, I'm around.
And I should also say that Thom wrote a really good blog post for me recently. And by the time this is published, that will be out. So I'll link to that from the show notes. And that is a blog post on sales, how to qualify prospects and close sales more effectively in your high-intensity training business. So look out for that. Okay, so guys, I want to just move on to the keynotes because I'm aware of time. And I just want to kind of quickly summarize some of those and talk about them a little bit. So shall we talk about, perhaps do them in chronological order. Which was the first one? Was Jeremy Lowenecki's was the first one, wasn't it? So, yeah. Go on, Thom.
Oh, I was thinking Luke.
Oh. Was Luke's the first? Right,
nope,
okay.
You're correct. Friday night, Jeremy.
Right, it was Jeremy. Okay.
I was just looking at the agenda. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So this is, I was quite, open with you both before this started that, Jeremy Lowenecki is renowned for making my head spin. Even when he was on my podcast multiple times, he just, maybe it's my IQ or I struggle to sometimes understand some of the stuff he talks about. It is very complex. And, he was obviously talking about the relationship between strength and hypertrophy during this particular presentation. Craig, it sounds like you got a better grasp of the points he was sort of trying to make. Do you want to just give your view on, what you learned from his presentation?
Yeah, I'll summarize it quickly because I constantly do this. I make the mistake when I do these things of trying to take notes and listen simultaneously, and that never really works for me. I'm far better if I just kind of kick back and listen and don't try to write anything down. I'll retain it better. That said, at the end of it, I mean, he was showing different studies that they had done comparing like lighter loads and heavier loads, and then tracking sort of the sort of mass gain results or hypertrophy results from that, and how you could see with a lower load. I'm trying to remember the numbers. I don't have that in front of me, but I think it was somewhere around, was it 40 or 50%, 1 RM, multiple sets taken to failure versus I think it was a 75 or 70 or 75% 1 RM on the same protocol, same exercises. But what you would see was a similar increase in muscle mass, but not the same increases in strength. And that's sort of what my takeaway from that, and this is what I've seen, kind of over and over again, is that load does matter if you're also looking to increase your maximal strength. And that's one of the things the conversation tends to always go back to mass development for, I think, most of us, mainly because there seems to be a gravitation to high intensity strength training, for people that are, quote unquote hard gainers like myself, where, we've tried the other methods, they haven't really worked out well, and then we come across this and it seems to work better, but I think, and this is something I would have liked to have discussed a little bit with, is it Chad or Chaz? Chaz. In terms of sports performance, because I think sometimes we talk a lot about mass, but we don't necessarily talk about the neurological efficiency, lifting heavier, and how that might translate into sports performance. So sort of separating the two components, because they don't necessarily go hand in hand, based on what Dr. Lenicky was presenting. I don't know if that made any sense, but
no, it does. It does. Tom, do you have a view on it at all? Any key takeaways from Jeremy's talk?
Well, I think what I got from his talk was that, and we kind of always know this, right? I mean, we strength train, right? We provide the stimulus to the body, and then we might want to get larger muscles, or we may want to just get stronger, or maybe we want to get stronger and have larger muscles. The takeaway for me was, we don't get to pick, right? You provide the stimulus, your genetics are going to respond to that stimulus, and you might get bigger, you might not. You're probably going to get stronger, if you're really lucky, you get stronger and bigger all at the same time.
So was it? It was Luke Carlson's. Because only the one. There was only the one keynote on the first day, and then it was Luke's the next morning. Was it?
I believe so. Eh?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was the Goose and the Golden Egg, which was, Luke is just an excellent speaker, and never fails to deliver very, very well. And this was all about acquisition, retention, developing your team and your staff. And obviously the goose, the goose and the golden egg analogy is that the trainers are the geese, and they lay the golden eggs. They are the profit center in your business. They are the core. And if you don't obviously look after them, develop them, acquire the right people, then that's going to be a real problem. So I guess, Tom, you're just that sounds really patronizing. It wasn't supposed to. But
no, it's okay.
It's just yourself, isn't it? So are you, did you
it's
find
my choice?
Of course. But did you find any of that particularly useful? Do you have any plans to take on staff at all?
I don't have plans to take on staff, but I can tell you, before I opened I was a senior director of a biotech company, senior director of IT for a biotech company, a contract research organization. And I can tell you that the team development practices that Luke presented are he just did an outstanding job of talking about how to build your team, how to make sure that you have rewards, how you let your people know what their next step is and what they need to do to get there. It's just any bit. You can apply this to any business. His presentation was excellent.
Craig, what were your thoughts? Because you're obviously planning to scale your business, I assume, and you've got some trainers and you bring on more. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, yeah. So I actually have two partners now. Not actually high intensity guys at all, which makes for an interesting dynamic in the space. But we play well with each other, and we actually play well off of each other. And so right now, stage of trying to find stuff and scale up. So it definitely, Luke's presentation definitely opened my eyes to what really needs to be done. I think sometimes, you kind of go to, you might know of a trainer, you might know somebody and just, I'll hire them. There's not really a lot of questions asked. I think it's just brilliant the way that Luke has developed a system to basically find the right people, train the right people, retain those people, and they're compensated well for it, in the long run. Like that's another thing that I was amazed with is what his top trainers are earning, which is a testament to the fact that they're staying there, that the fact that he's set up a process to develop them all the way through, and help them along and encourage them along. And I think it's hugely important. And, like Thom said, that's really any business, but I think you could even take some of those principles and apply it to your own clients, let alone a trainer, in terms of encouraging, getting them moving forward, setting goals and whatnot, if that makes sense.
It does. Might want to switch off video, Craig, to improve bandwidth quality. You just click the video icon there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
There, how's that?
Perfect. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And just so you guys are aware, I am bringing Luke on to do a podcast exclusively on that presentation.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So because I know it's difficult for I'm not much of a note taker either, and I know there'll be plenty of people who are wanting to just listen and not take notes, and it's a lot of information to take in and get down. So I figured it would be of value to everyone that attended, and for those that didn't get to attend, to do that. I think Luke's concerns are that if we create a lot of content that's similar to what was shown at Rec, that people wouldn't turn up in the future. But I think that I actually think it's the opposite. I think that they could make all of their content available and still many, many people would sign up. And to the points you both have raised during this, I think the collegiality, the networking is enormous part of it, and the main appeal. And obviously there's plenty of other good stuff too. So we'll be doing that at some point soon. I wanted to touch on James Fisher's keynote, which was quite interesting. I'd covered some of this before in podcasts with him. Do you want to give your view on that, Craig? Do you remember? I mean, I have some notes here. Unless you want to kind of give your summary on his presentation.
Well, just one of the things that what I liked was because in the previous podcast, you guys had discussed the idea that adding negatives and all these set extenders really didn't make a difference. But what I liked is what he pointed out in terms of a lot of people really don't hit true muscular failure. And, adding in these added on negatives at the end of the set or drop sets or whatever is just a way of ensuring that you've actually fully fatigued yourself and got into a deep enough inroad.
Yeah. Thom, what were your thoughts?
Well, he had several points, with respect to the advanced training protocols. Yeah, does it do any, is there any benefit? Yeah, there's maybe not physically, but as far as being able to create some more interest, to keep things interesting. I think those techniques they're fun to play with. You know what I mean? And there's no, as long as you're doing them in a safe way, there are no real drawbacks. So, as far as the advanced techniques, in quotes, I think if you can provide more interest when sparingly, I don't think you have to kill people every time they walk through the door. But I do think that, if let's take a negative only or negative workout, negative assess, or you don't want to do that every time. If you do, then the client's expecting it and they're going to hold back waiting for it. So you have to use these advanced techniques sparingly, and when you do that, they're more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And a couple other things which I noted from his presentation is, one of the overarching kind of things that he talked about was the research that showed that multi-joint exercises were just as effective or almost just as effective in almost all contexts over single joint. And I know that he recently featured on Adam Sickerman's podcast, Informed Fitness, where he actually talked about this as well. So I'll link to that. Where there was some exception to this was for the lumbar extensors, because I know that there's research to show that, with something like a lumbar extension machine, is the only way you can really effectively isolate the lumbar extensor muscles. Pretty much all other lower back exercises, you're involving the glutes or hamstrings. And so that was a good argument as to why, a single joint movement like that would be important for, and so we're talking about hypertrophy here, I should say. And then secondarily, he talked about potentially the biceps, because I think there was some research that showed better arm circumference when there was a bicep curl as opposed to just a pull down or some kind of multi-joint upper body pulling movement.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask him during the presentation, and I don't know why I didn't, but it was whether or not that also applied to the cervical spine. So, neck extension or cervical extension, cervical flexion, if that would have been something as well. Because you can argue that, let's say, if you're deadlifting and things like that, there's certainly a lot of pull, at least through the cervical extensors. But I'd be curious if, my guess is that, you would definitely want to isolate it. I'm hoping, because I bought a machine that does that. So, but I'm curious if there's actually any specific data on it.
Yeah, great question. And, it always disappoints me that after reading Ellington Darden's the new high intensity training, there's a really inspiring chapter in there about the importance of building broad shoulders and a strong neck. I think it talks about like the positive feedback you'd get in society, and maybe it goes quite a lot of hyperbole in there, but all the same, it's quite inspiring. So then I started doing, because I don't have, unfortunately, access to a 4-way neck machine, I started doing a lot of time static contractions, courtesy of Drew Bay's Project Kratos. So, basically doing neck flexion, neck extension, into a rolled up yoga mat, hoping to have just a yoked neck at the end of it. But alas, my genes are not that way. But but then again, it's funny, right? Because the neck, I assume, doesn't really have much room to hypertrophy based on its structure. And, I imagine correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but like you're probably, if you've got a thick neck, you've probably got a thick neck with no training at all. Look, when I played rugby, I wasn't much heavier than I am now. So I was probably around 158 pounds, and I'm weighing in right now, 155. But my neck, and I believe it or not, I was a hooker. So a very small hooker, but nonetheless. But my neck was about a 16 and a half, versus I think I'm about a 15 now. So there's definitely an 1.5 inch difference. Yeah, is that not because you're leaner?
No, I'm not. I was actually probably a little bit leaner then. And my neck work was effectively just, constantly being in a scrum, right? So that was most of the development wasn't from specific neck work. It was just constantly being in scrumming down.
Right. Okay. So you haven't been continuously working your neck since then, would you say?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And to, so to Darden's book I think, I think there is something to having a large neck. If you look at Henry Rollins and Google his earlier photos, his neck was, I think it was bigger than his head. Like it was so thick, it was insane. And it's very impressive. Like looking from the outside, you're just fixated on it.
Do you know what was also really interesting discovery? And again, you guys were perhaps aware of this, but I had no idea, was this assumption we make about bigger versus smaller muscles. And he basically brought up a table which showed the volume centimeter cubed of muscle volume of all the of some of the major muscle groups, or a lot of the muscles in the body. And what really surprised me is that triceps are actually bigger than your pectoralis major and your latissimus dorsi, which, we always assume that, pectoralis major and lats, well, at least I assumed they were much bigger and that, the triceps would be smaller. But the fact that the actual area of that muscle was larger was quite surprising. Is that something that you guys were already aware of, or was that similarly something that was new to you? And I direct that to Thom, I suppose.
Yeah, that was new to me. I don't really have anything to say about that, though. I mean, it's interesting, but
yeah. Craig?
It was definitely new to me. And then, when you think about it after the fact, you're like, yeah, of course. But no, because we always use these references like, if you train, you got to do your leg press, you got to do your chest press, because you got to hit the bigger muscles in those movements, so your pecs. And all of a sudden you're realizing, well, wait a minute, it certainly fans out and takes up, from a visual perspective more, but the actual density of the muscle obviously is towards the tricep and not towards the, at least the size of the tricep is bigger than the pec. So I think in terms of how we explain things, talking to clients, I actually think there probably is a little bit of an impact in that.
Absolutely. Some people might argue that it's just semantics, but I think it's more than that. I think it's important that we, get these things right and refine our language and that over time. So I agree. Chaps, I want to talk about McGuff's keynote. It was very emotional. Standing ovation at the end of it. Obviously, I just want to mention just quickly. I mean, Craig, obviously you gave a hat tip about Doug Reese earlier on in this conversation, but it was really surreal for me because, and I think I wonder if the listeners might be interested in hearing this, because I was actually talking to Anne-Marie Anderson when he walked in. So Doug, I think, came in the first day towards the end of the day, and he walked in, and then Anne-Marie Anderson said, "Oh, look, there's Doug," and he was behind me, and she said, "I must go and say hello to him," because I suppose she hadn't seen him for a long time. And then I just remember looking at him and going, wow, there's Doug. And it's just surreal because I'd done, at this point, around 5 podcasts with him. Many of us in that room have been inspired by Body by Science and by his work before that. And I know for a fact that many people in that room had started their business as a result of Body by Science. And Craig, I know that it was a huge turning point for you.
Yeah, 100%.
And, to be honest, I owe everything to Doug. I mean, just some of you will know this, but it was watching Doug's presentation at the 21 convention, which was recorded around just under 10 years ago, I believe, on YouTube. That blew my mind. And then it was after that I read Body by Science, and then I just became incredibly curious, and then obviously reached out to Doug's assistant at the time and then arranged that interview. But I had no podcast, I had no blog, I had no followers, so to speak. And he was just incredibly kind and generous and gave me the time of day, when his profile was certainly not small and growing with the book. And that started everything. I mean, without that opportunity, I'm not sure if I would have discovered how passionate I am about this and how much people would enjoy the content. So with all that being said, I kind of walked up, and he was obviously surrounded by people, and then he, caught his eye, and we went in for a handshake, but then we realized that a hug was definitely in order. And, and it was just a lovely moment, it was so great to finally meet him. And obviously he's sound and hilarious, and was telling us stories about, flights he'd had that were not very enjoyable, but just very entertaining guy. So did you guys get a good chance to speak to him as well and spend some time with Doug? And I suppose I'll ask Craig that.
Very, very briefly. I think it was on the dinner on the Saturday night. I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but I just asked him quickly because I know he had been recently been on the ARX, the newer version, and I just wanted to see what he thought of it. And I think his answer was felt a lot more like a gravity-based piece of equipment. That was his thing. So I didn't really get to speak to him much. I think he's just such an ambassador, not only to the high intensity training community, but I think also just to training in general. I think what separates him from a lot of the other kind of thinkers, if you want, in our industry, is that he's the way he looks at things, the way he explains things, and the way he thinks about things, I think is very unique, and I think that's what's kind of driving things forward right now for a lot of us.
Well, I'm just reading John Little's new book at the moment, and hoping to get him on the podcast soon to talk about his new book, which is very similar to Body by Science, but I think addressed to a different audience. And there's certainly some new stuff, at least new to me, which is very interesting. But he actually, in the introduction to that book, he says that, and I think he said this on my podcast, he believes that Doug is the greatest mind in exercise today.
I would agree with that, and I think
quite a statement.
I think the big loss is that I think most of the people that read Doug's blogs, watch his YouTube videos, are already in the high intensity training community, and I don't know that there's enough exposure of his work to people that are more in the sports performance sort of higher volume camps of training, the more traditional styles of training. Because I think even if you don't necessarily agree with everything in high intensity strength training, there's so many things that he says or that he writes about that will leave you thinking and questioning, that I think it's important, regardless of what side of the ball you're on, that you pay a little more attention to him. And I think he has a lot to offer anybody in strength and conditioning and health and fitness, as opposed to just the high intensity strength training community.
Thom, you've obviously you've been in this game a while, and I say that because I've seen pictures of you with Ken Hutchins, I believe, and yeah. I think you'd met Doug previous a couple of times, but was just curious, did you talk to Doug much? And what's your view on Doug, and I guess how his profile has grown in this industry?
Well, Doug is he's just an amazing guy. I mean, the fact that he's he's a full-time emergency room physician, and I first met Doug, I think it was at a RENX conference in 2013 or 14. And he was impressive then. And I went over to introduce myself, or I didn't think he would remember me, but I guess he remembered me, so I was impressed with that. Anybody who can take a crowd of 50 people and talk for 30 to 45 minutes off the cuff about myokines and stepping through the different stages of protein synthesis, he's just an impressive guy. And I would agree that, he is probably the most important person in the field of exercise right now. I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and his keynote was incredible, and I remember, I will never forget. I turned to my right at the end, and my friend Sean Dunleavy, who travelled from Galway in Ireland with me to the conference, who's a relatively recent convert of all things high intensity strength training and also carnivore diet, I might add. And he was actually in tears. He was actually in tears after the keynote, which was brilliant. Now, we'll talk a little bit about that. But before I do, Craig, Big Five.
Oh,
go.
The highlight, well, I mean, it wasn't the only highlight of what he said, but I loved where he kind of just, I wish I could impersonate it. It was great. Was him saying, like, he just wishes he never mentioned the Big Five in the book. Because like anything, it became sort of this religious, like, if you're not doing the Big Five, you're doing something wrong, and it has to be the Big Five. There's no variation. And I think people really missed the point, because he says it in the book. If you go back and read it, like, it's in there that we chose these 5 exercises because, it goes into the explanation, easy to learn compound. It's very, you don't have to be athletic. You can just jump on and go. But it's just a starting point. And I think for some people, like they read the Big Five and then never moved on from that, never read anything else, never did anything else. I think unfortunately, there's a lot out there that people should probably pay attention to. So I kind of laughed because my previous employer, that was business was based on the Big Five and nothing else. Like that was
right.
And
yeah,
we know how that was there for us.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, you might want to just check your mic there, Craig, because your volume was quite low there.
Sorry about that. Better.
That's much better. But no, like just what you were saying there is just for those that couldn't catch the end there is just that people come across the Big Five and then that becomes their entire exercise paradigm and they never go outside of that. And that really limits one's learning, I think, and ability to then apply a variety of exercises to themselves and to their clients. I can really vouch for this actually because James Fisher teases me about this because I've talked a lot about the Big Five and the Big Three and all that. And I can confess that for a very, very long time, that's pretty much all I did. And just by deviating slightly with some of his 2 and 3-way splits in Body by Science was a learning curve, but it's still quite myopic in terms of the number of exercises that you use. And it's only since trying a routine in Dr. Jürgen Giesing's book, High Intensity Training, which is a push-pull routine in there that I'm trying, me, which, incorporates deadlifts and pullovers, dumbbell pullovers and things like that. And some of those things I've never done ever. And so it's quite embarrassing because I consider myself as somewhat a experienced person in exercise, and there I am in a busy gym trying these exercises for the first time and conscious that I might be being judged for my poor form or what have you. But it obviously it's if you're going to do this stuff and build a career in it and open your mind about what's out there, it's important to have some variety and try some of these different exercises, and you might get better results as well. So yeah, it humbled me a lot. Trying this new routine made me realize just how little I know, So, but I wanted to talk about his keynote, which was really inspiring. Doug touched on a number of topics. He, from memory, I mean, his slideshow is quite vague because obviously you have to listen to what he says. But it was kind of like focusing on how he talks about his journey, which many people have heard about. Starting off how he discovered high intensity training, how it gave him great results as a professional BMX racer, and then how he kind of reduced volume over time. So starting off with a lot of volume in the way of Arthur Jones's materials, then coming across Ellington Darden's and reducing volume, and then I believe Mike Mensa and reducing even further, and actually seeing as he reduced volume and frequency, how his body actually responded better to that, and he got better results. And then talking about one of the most important points, which doesn't get talked about enough, which is just how negatively regulated muscle hypertrophy is, and which was wonderfully illustrated by the contrast between Jay Vincent, who is the poster boy right now, I suppose, for high intensity training, and Simon Shawcross. Pretty much exact same routines, exact same protocol, and probably similar diet, and look completely different. And there's a lack of appreciation for that right now. But would love, Thom, what's your view on some of the kind of key takeaways you got from that presentation, or what were the things that you found most interesting about it before I go on any further?
Well, what I really appreciate from Dr. McGuff is just, again, he's always bringing it back to what this is all about, and what exercise is about. Yeah, big muscles are cool, but not everybody's going to get big muscles as a result of strength training. So, what's important is giving clients the opportunity to have an efficient workout that's actually they can do something in their lives. They can incorporate that into their lives. Giving them a safe environment and a safe routine that the last thing you want to do is be injured in the gym. If you're going to do something, if you're going to get injured, it ought to be doing something fun, not working out. So just maintaining the efficiency, maintaining the safety, reducing wear and tear on your joints. And, his takeaway was, it's so damn cool what we're doing. We get clients to come in, work really hard, get great results, and then they go away, and then they come back in a week later or, 3 days later, whatever it is, whatever schedule they're on, and do it all over again. And the results are fantastic. So, he had talked about, anti-aging effects of resistance exercise, and there are just so many benefits. It's and there's so many. I think he talked about all the what he sees in the emergency room, all the common diseases, obesity, diabetes. He had a much longer list, but really, resistance exercise is really a way of helping everybody fight those. We certainly don't have to go down that pathway for ourselves. And resistance exercise is the answer to a lot of those ailments. So he was his closing remarks were very powerful, and it makes you feel good doing what we do, and we should.
Yeah, and I remember his closing statement, as you said there, was so powerful because he said, I mean, I'm not going to get this, I'm probably going to butcher this, but he essentially said,
I did.
What was that? But you mean you butchered it?
I butchered it. Yeah.
Oh no, not at all. I thought you were very articulate. But no, he what I remember him saying was like, you guys, as in all of the practitioners in a room, are doing more for healthcare than anyone in the medical industry.
Yeah.
In terms of your impact on the populace and help improving their health, which was very profound. Craig, what about you? Like, apart from obviously the big five clarification, what else was there that you found quite inspiring or useful?
What I liked was, and it mainly because it got me thinking a little bit, when he's talking about the stimulus organism, and the response, right? So he's comparing the three and talking about how, we're constantly trying to better the stimulus, but there was very little kind of focus at one point on how the body recovers, but we kept working on a better stimulus, and ignoring the thing that's probably the most important, which is the recovery, and then talking about how the organism itself is really the bottleneck of the entire process. And, it came up a couple of times where it didn't really matter what you were using as long as you were pushing to failure and all these things. And what I realized was a lot of times when we have the discussion, we're sort of, we're talking to two different audiences, in that we have the person listening that doesn't own a studio, isn't a trainer, but just wants to, learn and use these principles to better their workouts and to better their health. And then we have the studio owners and trainers that are looking for the better tool. And I think from the studio perspective, when you're reading that, you have to look at it and say, well, yeah, 100% right. I could use the crappiest piece of equipment out there and just modify it to make it work. But somebody's going to pay me the money to do this with them. So I think you need to up the game and have the better equipment. From that end, on the end of the end user that sits there and doesn't have access, you've talked in the past, Lawrence, about how, being in Ireland and not necessarily having access to keys or to MedX or anything really decent. On that end, a lot of people, I think, get too focused on the stimulus, on the tool to provide the stimulus, and forget what the goal is, right? So, it's fine for the studio owner to want the better gun, if you will. So in my case, wanting to upgrade to ARX. But for the average person, if you don't have access to that, it doesn't mean that you won't get results. It just means that you're going to have to come up with a workaround and a better way of doing it. But at the end of the day, if you can create that stimulus using, quote unquote, ghetto equipment, and body weight or whatever it is, then so be it. Don't worry about not having, the best of the best. So that was the first thing I got out of it. And sort of the idea of that ebb and flow in terms of your volume and your frequency and whatnot. And he makes the point of the more accurate or the more precise and hardcore that stimulus is, the more that's going to affect the recovery side of that equation, and the more you've got to focus on that. So, yeah, I could listen to the guy talk all day. I'll be honest with you. I'll go back after this now and re-download all of your past interviews with him, and I'll throw John Little into that as well, because I find they're very similar in the way they can speak. But in terms of Doug, I think just I make it a thing now where I will forward off his interviews or your interviews with him from your podcast, some of his YouTube videos, because I think he's so eloquent in the way he can take something complex and just break it down so that a 15-year-old can understand it, which is just I wish I had that ability.
Yeah. I second both, what you've both been saying about the presentation. And I just, I know we've perhaps focused more on this than we have the other keynotes, and I don't want to downplay those because they were also excellent. But I guess for me, and maybe for a lot of us, McGuff has played such a big role. And that's probably part of the reason why we talk about it so much. But I just wanted to also emphasize the whole myokine thing. I think this is something which Doug hasn't talked a great deal about on my podcast, and I know he's been writing a book which has kind of been parked for a moment because he's just been so damn busy. But I know he perhaps plans to finish that at some point. And that's going to be focused on myokines, is my understanding. But we're probably going to collaborate soon, certainly within the membership for Q&A, and maybe also on the public podcast to talk about myokines, because I think that is such an interesting topic, especially just, just for those that don't understand what that is, it essentially, muscle being one of the most endocrine organs in the body, when you stimulate it, and you guys can correct me if I get any of this wrong, it secretes these chemical messengers, and which effectively improve many, many factors within the body, things like insulin sensitivity, they stimulate apoptosis in cancer cells, which is programmed cell death. They basically stimulate improvements in most, if not all, of the other organs in the body, and that's some of and he was kind of referring to this as Pandora's box. We started doing this stuff to get big muscles, and we didn't realize we were doing all these other things that were benefiting our health. And as I get older, and obviously I still care about trying to look good, but I'm starting to appreciate and find more interest in learning about some of these other mechanisms that are going on, that are really, really important. So I don't know, did I articulate that okay, or is there anything that I might have missed there, chaps? And I guess I'll direct that to probably Thom if you've got any more color to add on the myokine side of things.
No, I thought you did great.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
What about you, Craig?
No, I think you nailed it. And Thom, I don't know because Thom, I think you're a couple years older than I am, but and to your point, Lawrence, I think as we're getting older, we're looking at things differently than we did when we were in our 20s, and it was all about the beach body and the looking good for the ladies and everything else. And I think now, my father's 87. Plays hockey twice a week. My mother's 82 years old. They both train with me once or twice a week. I've sort of moved from this idea of trying to get jacked, which never happened. So it's 20 years of my life that I can't get back.
Right. You look pretty good to me, mate.
Oh, thanks, man. But I look at my parents and I look at, the quality of life that they have at their age. And I realize, and Doug's keynote certainly drove this home, is that there's all these other things that go with exercise that you don't necessarily see it on the surface because, maybe you don't have the six-pack abs, but internally there's so many positives going on. And I watch, my parents are still moving around. They're still active. They're still driving. I've got 3 girls. They still have, those 2 grandparents. And I'd like to, be able to get to that easily. And I think to Dr. McGuff's point, I think doing this kind of training is massively helping that. So
absolutely. So probably going to need to wrap up there, guys. But is there anything we haven't talked about? Any kind of final thoughts, Thom, from you that you want to give on the conference at all? Things that might be useful to those potentially thinking of attending in 2020?
Well, I would what we didn't talk about were the lineup of the rapid presentations, where we heard from who's who of high intensity strength training around the country, around the world, I guess. And but what I would do is I would recommend that if you have the opportunity to attend next year's conference, you should do that. I'm looking forward to it. I was looking forward to 2020 before I even left 2019. So I think it was just a great group of folks. I hope everybody who made it this year can make it again next year, because forming those relationships, especially for me, like a sole operation, right? A one-man shop. It's very refreshing to just be able to experience the camaraderie and the just being around your peers. That's probably the one thing. That's probably the only thing that I miss about working in the corporate environment, the corporate world, is being around like-minded peers with common goals. So having the opportunity to be in that environment was fantastic. And I would highly recommend that you find your way there next year.
Yeah. No, I can really relate to that. Obviously, being a solo entrepreneur, and whilst I'm very happy to have left the corporate world, I totally relate to that, and I do sometimes miss that community that you have there. So, no, I can see why that was a real appeal for you, Thom. Yeah. Craig, any kind of like final thoughts about the conference, stuff that perhaps I didn't ask you about that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. Like you said, we focused a little bit on Dr. McGuff's speech, but I think that's that was a pretty important one. So I just it was an eye opener to listen to Chaz. Is it pronounced Mali or Mal from the Vikings?
I cannot remember, and the only reason I haven't talked about his presentation or the rapid ones is time. Otherwise, I definitely would have. But sorry, continue.
Yeah.
But just very quickly, what was interesting was the way he described having to concede certain things when you're working with professional athletes, and what you may think is right as a strength coach may not agree with the head coach of that sports team. So it was interesting to kind of hear the back stories of the politics that goes on in designing a program for a pro team. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I would just echo what Thom said. I think in terms of the conference as a whole, I was really blown away. I think, hats off to Luke Carlson, to Hannah, and the way they've organized just a fantastic event. And I'm so glad I went, because I haven't done one of these things in years, like I said. And I'll be back there next year. And I really, really recommend anybody that's, even if you're not a studio owner or a trainer, if you can get, or, if you're just somebody that's really interested in high intensity strength training and what goes on with it in terms of the research and whatnot, I get down there and check it out, because I think it's like Thom said, it's just like, it's a great group of people. Everybody's open to answering questions, and it's honestly, it's going to be an event that I'll be going to for the next few years for sure.
Cool. And Craig, what's the best way for people to find out more about you?
Easiest way to find out about me right now, you can just drop me an email at craig@Gethit.ca. I had actually deactivated my Facebook account for the longest time.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. That's a little Cal Newport influence there. I have reactivated them. I'm much better on not going on it too frequently, but you can definitely look me up on Facebook. Just my name, Craig Hubert. No business page yet, though that is coming. And otherwise, that's pretty much it.
And what about yourself, Thom?
Well, on the very small chance that somebody wants to get a hold of me, no, Thom at smarterexercise.org is probably the best way to get a hold of me. I have Facebook and social media, but I really don't look on there enough to make that useful. Maybe LinkedIn, but I couldn't tell you what my LinkedIn name is right now. So Thom at smarterexercise.org is the best way.
And I'll obviously link to both of your websites on the blog post, but it's smarterexercise.org for you, isn't it, Thom?
Yes.
And Gethit.ca, is it, Craig?
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool, okay. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com/REC 2019. And for all episodes, please go to highintensitybusiness.com/podcast. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to become a great personal trainer and build a successful high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field.